How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 2.
My fellow Americans, welcome. It's Eric Erickson here, and I sure hope you're having a great day. The phone number, should you wish to be on the program, is 877-973-7425. Feel free to call in. You got to make it past the call screener, though. Don't blame me or him. It is the anniversary of the disaster at Abbey Gate and our disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan and the deaths of 13 American service members. Joe Biden has released a prepared statement on the matter. Kamala Harris has released a prepared statement on the matter. Donald Trump actually laid a wreath at Arlington National Cemetery and spent time with the families. His response matters. Democrats over the weekend trying to justify this. Here is Democratic Congressman Auchincloss on the withdrawal from Afghanistan.
It was. It was also the right decision to make, to leave Afghanistan. Joe Biden had the moral courage to make a decision that previous presidents had refused to make because of sunk cost bias and groupthink. That war had no political endgame. And the first thing a Marine officer learns is that all war is an extension of politics by other means. The national government in Kabul had no agenda and no capacity to build a nation, and so Americans were left holding the bag.
Now, Jake Auchincloss, a Democrat from Massachusetts, was a Marine. He is one of the people that the Democrats have trotted out to justify these sorts of decisions. Margaret Brennan, however, had on a different Democrat who has been critical of the withdrawal and is now trying to avoid that criticism because Kamala Harris has said repeatedly she was the last one in the room and stood by the decision.
Put that aside, though, I want to ask you about Afghanistan, because in your call for Joe Biden to step aside, you also pointed to that as a Biden-Harris problem. In fact, you said it was a strategic and a moral failure, that withdrawal. The vice president says she was that last person in the room on that decision. Is that failure also hers?
We've got to stop assigning partisan blame on fundamental things like our national security. I said it as an American. I said it as somebody who served in combat, who had friends that served in Afghanistan. If we can't make mistakes and wrestle with that with a little bit of space to do better in the future, how do we expect to continue on the next 250 years as this great country that we are?
You said this, and it was about Kamala Harris was the last person in the room. We got to move on. We got to move on. Yes. This is part of the problem here for the Democrats is this was the moment that Joe Biden's polling flipped. It was the moment actually Joe Biden lost 2024. You know, I said that at the time. And Democrats scoffed at me and said, you can't say that. And then look at 2022. People brought it back up and said, look at 2022, Erickson. Democrats neutralized the red wave. Here you are thinking Joe Biden lost 2024. Where is Joe Biden on the ballot now? His call to get out of Afghanistan and his treatment of the dead soldiers. Remember, he looked at his watch. At the ceremony where these dead soldiers are being brought home, he looked at his watch. And when he tried to console the family, he tried to tell those families that his son, Bo, had died in Iraq. It didn't go over with those families, many of whom went on stage at the Republican National Convention to criticize Joe Biden. Scott Jennings on CNN.
Yes, I totally agree with that. And that's the one thing about the convention that I think they couldn't wash off. And they're trying. And with this new TV ad from Kamala Harris, there's just a complete ignoring of the fact that she's the sitting vice president, that she's been at the center of American public affairs for a number of years, that she has a voting record, that she has public statements, and that she has a record for the last 3.5 years. I don't know how they plan to cure that. I suspect at some point she's going to have to look into a television camera and answer this question. Can you name one or two things that you think Joe Biden has done wrong? And she's going to have to decide whether to answer that question or not. It's hard because the most consequential decisions he made, she was either the last person in the room on Afghanistan, her words, or she went up to the Senate and cast a tie-breaking vote. So I don't know how she's going to break with him, but if she wears him for the rest of the election, it will be very difficult to win.
Republicans, don't overthink your strategy. You don't have to waffle on abortion. You don't have to walk back long settled views. Kamala Harris is Joe Biden's proxy in this election. Kamala Harris was the border czar. And every member of the media was fine calling her the border czar until the moment it became politically inconvenient. "13 Americans lost their lives in Afghanistan as bodies fell from airplanes, splattering on the ground, people trying to flee." Here's the thing people miss. Afghanistan, like the fighting of old, even to a degree like the fighting in Ukraine, it has a fighting season. There's a fighting season, and there's a harvest season, and there's a winter season. You see, what happens in Afghanistan is it snows in the mountains. It gets very cold. You think about it as a desert region, it gets very cold there. And the tribal leaders, they bunker down in the wintertime. And in the spring, they plant. They plant the poppies for opium. They plant the crops, and then they go fight. And then towards September, October, they begin to wind down. They go harvest the crops before the snow falls. This was a pattern of the Roman Empire. There was a fighting season. There was a planting season. There was a winter season. Donald Trump wanted to withdraw from Afghanistan. He picked a time that he wanted to withdraw. And his generals sat down with him and said, "Sir, this is a bad idea. If you want to withdraw from Afghanistan, obviously you can withdraw from Afghanistan, but do not withdraw from Afghanistan in the middle of the fighting season. Withdraw from Afghanistan in the winter when no one is fighting. It will allow the Afghans time to reinforce their positions." And Donald Trump said, "Well, I'm going to be out of office by the wintertime." And they said, "Well, okay. Pass it to the next president." And Donald Trump said, "Okay." So Joe Biden came in, and we know they did the same thing to Joe Biden. They said, "Mr. President, if you want to leave Afghanistan, you can leave Afghanistan. You're the commander-in-chief, but don't do it now." And Joe Biden disgustingly decided he wanted it to be timed to the anniversary of 9/11. He wanted the last people out by September 11th. Don't forget that. Joe Biden wanted it to be seared in people's memory that he would have everyone gone by September 11th. That's a key point that doesn't get talked enough about in the media. Ghoulishly deciding he wanted to time our retreat from Afghanistan to September 11th. And so the retreating began now in a rushed operation to get as many people out so that Joe Biden could address the nation by September 11th and say, "We're done." And his soldiers, his generals, they said, "Sir, it's the middle of the fighting season. It's not a good idea." And Joe Biden didn't care. He wanted them out. And Kamala Harris says on record, on video, she was the last person in the room with Joe Biden, and she agreed with the decision. 13 Americans died. This should be a signature issue for the GOP. Kamala Harris backed Joe Biden, has defended the decision, has said it was the right decision. She should own the decision. It is to Donald Trump's great credit that he has continued to bring up this issue. You can say it's politically crash. You can say he's exploiting it. The family, however, the families of the dead appreciate that Donald Trump has had their backs. The families of the dead appreciate the fact that Donald Trump spoke up for them. And the families of the dead continue to be appalled that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have never really treated them the way they would expect to be treated when their children died following an order that even Joe Biden's generals said he should not at that time be giving. This is Kamala Harris in her interview with CNN some time ago.
President Biden always said that he wants you to be the last person in the room, particularly for big decisions, just as he was for President Obama. He just made a really big decision, Afghanistan.
Yes.
Were you the last person in the room?
Yes.
And you feel comfortable?
I do.
That was Kamala Harris. That was Kamala Harris. She was the last person in the room. She says she feels confident. 13 Americans died, and Joe Biden had the audacity to check the time on his watch when they were bringing the bodies out of the plane, and then made sure to tell those families that, well, actually, my son, Beau, died in Iraq when he did not. Joe Biden made it about himself and his family, trying to find some way to connect to these families whose children died because of his bad order. And you know what? That's the moment that his polling started falling. And his polling never recovered from Afghanistan because the president who claimed he would return us to normal, the president who claimed that he would be a president for everyone, and a president who claimed he had basic empathy where Donald Trump had none, showed that he was full of crap. Showed he didn't care. Showed that he was so arrogant to believe that he should be able to time our withdrawal from Afghanistan for September 11th so he could have a rah-rah moment. He put his own optics ahead of reality, and bodies fell from airplanes, and 13 Americans died. And those of you on the left can say Donald Trump is engaged in crass partisanship by elevating these 13 dead soldiers and their families, but actually Joe Biden's the one who opened the door for Donald Trump to do something that those families wanted. Those families just wanted their children to be remembered and acknowledged for the heroes they were, who died because of Joe Biden's bad orders. And Joe Biden to this day refuses to acknowledge that it was his order that got those 13 killed. And Joe Biden on a debate stage with Donald Trump claimed that no one lost their lives on his watch in Afghanistan. He did not even remember those 13 soldiers dying. So good for Donald Trump for reminding Americans of what happened. And now the campaign needs to remind Americans. Kamala Harris says she was the last person in that room, and she stood by Joe Biden's decision that got 13 Americans killed as bodies fell from the sky of people trying to flee the Taliban because Joe Biden decided to launch the withdrawal at a time his own military told him was a bad idea because it was the fighting season and the Taliban would be prepared. Oh, and by the way, the CIA botched the estimate and presumed Kabul would not fall in a day, and it did. AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry. Everybody's talking about it. Billions of dollars invested, so buckle up. The problem is AI needs a lot of speed and processing power. So how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud. Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less like Uber, 8x8, Databricks, Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/Erickson, ERICKSON. That's oracle.com/Erickson, oracle.com/Erickson. Go check them out today. Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the nation. One of the very first things Joe Biden did when he got into the White House was to take the Houthi off the U.S. list of global terror organizations. The Houthi have now blown up an oil tanker in the Red Sea, the MT Delta Soyunion. The attack threatens to spill 1 million barrels of oil into the Red Sea, an amount 4 times the size of the Exxon Valdez. While the crew has been evacuated, the Houthi appear determined to sink the ship and its cargo into the sea. So the Exxon Valdez spilled 257,000 barrels of oil, or roughly 17 Olympic-sized swimming pools of oil, and the Houthi are spilling many more times that. Notice the environmentalists are awful quiet right now, as they have decided that they will say nor do anything to potentially undermine Kamala Harris. They know they've got her in the bag. They know that she will stand with them. They know that there is no doubt that she's with them on the issues, and so the environmentalists are just keeping their mouths shut. They do not care what Kamala Harris says publicly because they know she's a true believer on these issues. So there's nothing about the Houthi. There's no condemnation. There's no nothing. It's kind of wild. And in fact, the Houthi shipping lane in the Red Sea, get this, it is the most intense U.S. naval combat area since World War II. That's right. The United States Navy is engaged in more military action in the Red Sea right now than they've been engaged in any arena since World War II. That should give you an idea of what's happening there, that the Biden administration has turned a blind eye to, and now a oil tanker has been hit, leaking more oil into the Red Sea than the Exxon Valdez did in Alaska, and the environmentalists don't care. They don't want to say anything, because they don't want to undermine Kamala Harris, and they don't want to undermine Joe Biden, and this is causing an increase in shipping prices, an increase in delays, risks another crisis of supply chain disruption, and we're supposed to believe all of this is okay, and no one in the press wants to ask Biden anything because he's nowhere to be seen to begin with, and they certainly don't want to seem to be helping Donald Trump. The Houthi are at it again. No accountability. Biden just tells them, tisk, tisk, don't do that again, thinking that'll work. Americans for Prosperity is building a grassroots army, and they want you to be a part of it. All you have to do is go to americansforprosperity.org today. They will give you all the information you need to be the most knowledgeable one of your friends on policy related to the border, policy related to taxes, policy related to school choice, policy related to families and how to benefit families. And then they'll turn you into an activist, teaching you how to talk about these issues to your neighbors in a way your neighbors can understand, teaching you how to talk about it to your local school board, your local city council, or even your state legislature, so that you can be the most informed citizen in your circle of friends and get people involved in fighting for real change, for common sense conservative reforms related to the border, related to school choice, related to supporting families and small businesses. All you have to do is go to americansforprosperity.org. They've got chapters in almost every state. They'd love to have you involved with them. It's americansforprosperity.org, americansforprosperity.org. Go sign up with them today. Be part of their army of activists nationwide. Greetings. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be a part of this program, I would be happy to have you. So I want to talk about a little bit of a wild card story that might fly over some of your heads. I want to make this as relatable as possible. If you want to appreciate the uniqueness of the United States of America, consider our Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments of the Constitution, and were established on agreement of the founders when some of the anti-federalists said, well, there's no guarantee of rights in the Constitution. We want something like the English Bill of Rights. You have to remember the history here. The grandparents of our revolutionary leaders fought in the Glorious Revolution of 1688 in Britain. What came out of the Glorious Revolution was the English Bill of Rights that did things you may be familiar with, like guarantee religious practice, guarantee the right to keep and bear arms, guarantee trial by juries, things like that. And the leaders of the American Revolution said, well, we will give you a Bill of Rights. Pass the Constitution. We guarantee day one we'll get in the Bill of Rights. We've already done this. We'll add these amendments to it. Here's what they'll be. And they agreed. The states agreed. And the founders kept their word. And one of the most unique aspects of our Bill of Rights is a freedom of speech, freedom of expression, a freedom of press, the prohibition on an establishment of religion, and the freedom to practice one's own religion. The freedom of speech is becoming a sticking point for the elite around the world. The elite have decided it's better to censor than to respond. And in the world today, increasingly, we are unique among nations with free speech rights. In fact, Prince Harry from Great Britain has criticized the unfettered free speech in the United States. Now, it's not completely free speech. There are consequences. You cannot say something about someone that is untrue and expect to get away with it. They can sue you for defamation. Your speech does have consequences. There are some bizarre people these days who think that I should be able to say anything I want, even if it's not true, and there be no consequences for it. And in fact, while you can say a lot of things that are not true, if you say something about an individual that is not true, that person can sue you for defamation. If it's a politician, it's a higher standard. Why? Because celebrities and politicians are expected to live to a higher standard where there has to be malice. You have to know explicitly this thing is not true. And even then, it's a very high bar, particularly in politics, saying things about politicians. But generally, the United States has a pretty broad free speech right. I bring this up because Pavel Durov has been arrested in France. Now, most of you have probably never heard of Pavel Durov. You're going to hear a lot about him. He is a Russian who also has citizenship in the United Arab Emirates, France, St. Kitts, and Nevis. He was traveling by private plane. He's a billionaire traveling from Azerbaijan through France. He was stopped in France and arrested on criminal charges related to the platform he owns called Telegram. Now, let me sidestep to something and explain Telegram to you. There are a number of apps out there that claim to be encrypted. WhatsApp is probably the most famous. So I know the owner of WhatsApp. And I use WhatsApp exclusively to text the owner of WhatsApp, who, when he told me to use WhatsApp, I told him I knew nothing about this app. I don't know anything about it. Is it actually secure? And he says, yes, it's secure. I said, well, who owns it? And he says, me. Signal is another encrypted app. And iMessage, if you have iPhone, so Elizabeth Warren and others have made a big deal about the green chat bubbles on your iPhone versus the blue chat bubbles. And we all make jokes about blue. I have friends like Charlie, for example, refuses to get an iPhone. He tells me if I buy him an iPhone, he'll have an iPhone, and that'll be the one he communicates with me on, but then he'll never see the messages because he won't look at the phone. So I just send him to his text, and he generates green chat bubbles. And I joke about him being well paid, that it should actually be a blue bubble, but he still acts like he's poor, so he has the green chat bubbles. But what the actual green chat bubble signals is it's an insecure message. When you send a message from an iPhone to an iPhone, it's encrypted from the beginning to the end. The only person who can read the message is the person on the other end receiving the message. As it goes through Apple's servers, Apple has no ability to read it because it is encrypted. They can't process it. So if the federal government goes to Apple and says, give me all of the messages from this person's phone, if that person's phone has only sent iMessages, Apple can't give the government those messages. Apple can only give the green chat bubble messages because those are unsecured. That's why the green chat bubble is there. It's to signal to people that it is not a secure system. It's one of the reasons that if you try to set up a group on iMessage, that it's limited to 32 people. You can't have more than 32 people in a group chat with iMessage, because the way iMessage works is it's actually sending a message from my phone to each of those other people's phones. So I've got a group chat. It's all iMessage, and it is 5 of us. When I send a message, it goes to all of my friends. There's 6 of us. So mine sends individual messages to those 5 other people. WhatsApp, you can only do 1,024 people. Signal, you can do 1,000 people for secure chats. Now, WhatsApp and Signal do things differently. So when I send messages by my iPhone, the encryption goes from my iPhone through Apple to the other iPhone, and Apple can't unpack them. The way Signal and WhatsApp operate is when I send a message from my iPhone to someone on WhatsApp, my message gets to WhatsApp's server at Meta, and before Meta can intercept and see my message, it's grabbed by an encryption protocol. And the encryption protocol does 2 things. It grabs my message and says, Meta's not allowed to see this. Let's see who it's to. And then it says to the other phone, here, you're about to get a message. Here's the key so that you can read it. So WhatsApp grabs my message. The only thing Facebook reads is who it's to, sends an encryption key out to my friend on the other side and says, you're about to get a message. This is how you'll be able to read it. And in the meantime, Facebook, Meta, WhatsApp can't read it because before it gets to the server, it's encrypted. Signal does something very similar. Your message goes to Signal's server where it's encrypted, and everybody gets a key to unlock your message. And Signal doesn't hold on to the key. Now, if I've confused you, I don't know if you're with me or not. Let me summarize it this way. WhatsApp, Signal, and iMessage on your iPhone, they encrypt messages so that only you and the people you intend to have read them can get them. A lot of people use Telegram because of Telegram's encryption. In fact, a lot of drug dealers use Telegram. The reason drug dealers like to use Telegram is because of Telegram's security. And Telegram, unlike WhatsApp and Signal and iMessages, can have an unlimited number of people in a group. So if you're a drug dealer sending drugs around the world, people can get into your group that you know about from the black market and communicate with the drug dealer or the child trafficker or the arms dealer, or you name it, or the pornographer, except there's a problem. Everyone is convinced Telegram is encrypted, and it's not. Did you know? Those of you who use Telegram, most people don't, but Telegram around the world, most people in the United States don't use it because they're competing social media channels. But globally, Telegram is the most popular social media group, and it's because most people actually believe that Telegram is encrypted, and it's not. In fact, every single message from Telegram goes through Telegram's servers, unencrypted. So if you're the drug trafficker or the human trafficker or the pornographer or the criminal gangster overlord or the terrorist, Telegram can read all of your messages. And that's France's concern, that Telegram didn't actually take the time to encrypt itself as it claimed it was, And so it should be able to tip off the authorities when the terrorists are plotting on Telegram. There is one country that is rumored to have that sort of access on Telegram. That would be Vladimir Putin's Russia. Pavel Durov is Russian, and he left Russia and moved to the United Arab Emirates when he lost control of what was essentially the Facebook of Russia. He started Telegram. And there have long been rumors that he has allowed the Russians a backdoor into Telegram channels to snoop on the Chechens and the other terrorists who operate in Russia. Remember, Russia has an internal terrorism problem with Islamic radicals itself. It is very notable that after he was arrested in France, the Russians showed up to meet with him, and the French refused to allow the Russians to meet with their citizen. He technically now has citizenship in France and the UAE and has left Russia. The Russians still have relationships with him. And so there's speculation that maybe this really isn't about free speech. There might be something more related to the Russians. However, the French have now charged him with crimes, 12 crimes. And those crimes relate to his administration of Telegram, and they raise a big issue. Can the operators of platforms be liable for the things other people do on their platform? Elon Musk raising this issue, obviously, because there are a lot of people in Europe very upset with him for his conversation with Donald Trump. There are two big things you got to take away from this issue, one of which is that we are unique, increasingly so, around the world in our defense of free speech. Other countries claim to support free expression. They don't necessarily do that. Emmanuel Macron actually released a statement. He rarely does in these sorts of prosecutions, and said, quote, France is deeply committed to freedom of expression and communication, to innovate, and to the spirit of entrepreneurship. It will remain so. The arrest of the president of Telegram on French soil took place as part of an ongoing judicial investigation. It is in no way a political decision and is up to the judges to rule on the matter. We are unique in the world these days on support for free speech. And a lot of the free speech advocates immediately came out and blasted this. By the way, Durov is a weird dude. He's 39 years old and has over 100 kids. He's like a serial donor to women who like want to have kids, who want like high performance, good genetics kids. Very, very odd. But he is in defense of free speech on the surface. Behind the scenes, though, what you learn about Telegram is that it is used by drug dealers, weapons dealers, terrorist organizations, extremist groups, and human traffickers, because they all think it's a very secure app. They all think that they can engage on it anonymously, and it turns out you can't on Telegram. You can't. None of it is encrypted behind the scenes, except message. You can do, there's one type of message on Telegram, message phone to phone, that's encrypted. But the channels and the group chats that everybody thinks are secure, they're not. And the only country that is rumored to have access to that server-side information is Russia. The French clearly want that information as well, and they're prosecuting this guy. It's bigger than a free speech case. At the same time, we should be deeply concerned that France and the European Union seem to be heading towards this new standard that the owners and creators of platforms can be criminally liable for the things others do on their platforms. And that has implications for Tim Cook at Apple, whose messages are end-to-end encrypted and they can't uncover the stuff the French might want. And for Twitter and for Meta and for so many more. Free speech is at stake. But listen, let's not deny there's probably other competing, conflicting issues here related to the server-side information and what access the Russians may or may not have to it. This could be a much bigger story than the free speech angle that everybody's focused on, and we just don't know yet. So tread carefully, but pay attention to this story. Now, Vision Computer wants you to build a computer with them, and if you reach out to them, they can not only build you better than what you're going to get at the store, but they're going to give you their free award-winning 5-star service free of charge with it. All you have to do is call them at 404 Computer. Go to visioncomputers.com. Now, not only that, what's more interesting is that if you're a small business and already have pre-existing computers, and you need tech support. So your employees, if they got any sort of problem, they can get a phone number, call it 15 seconds or less, get the answer. Well, that's where Vision Computers comes in. So you don't have to pay the six figures for the in-house IT guy. You pay Vision $179 a year per computer, and they become your in-house IT guy. VisionComputers.com or 404-COMPUTE. You call them. They can do email support, printer support. They can keep your employees focused on their jobs while Vision focuses on the computers. And if you need new computers for your home or office and Vision builds them, that level of tech support comes completely free. 404-COMPUTE or VisionComputers.com. Any one of you nationwide, any business nationwide can take advantage of it. 404-COMPUTE. Just how bad is it for Kamala Harris? No Democrat other than Elizabeth Warren is willing to defend her price gouging plan. In fact, multiple news outlets, including Politico, are out with stories that behind the scenes Democrats are telling the Harris campaign to drop it, that it's not going to happen, that it would take 60 votes in the Senate, and that even then there aren't enough Democratic senators who are willing to vote for it. That what's so significant about this that people don't seem to want to appreciate is that this is the first policy position Kamala Harris has come out with running for president of the United States. Her price gouging plan is the first policy announcement from her campaign, and even Democrats in Congress are repudiating it. If you want to know why Kamala Harris doesn't want to sit down with members of the media, why she doesn't want to be asked tough questions, why her campaign is protecting her, and why the American Press Corps is protecting her, that's why. Her gut level first policy instinct was to trot out a price control plan that even Democrats on Capitol Hill and even Barack Obama's own chief economists are saying is too much, too far, and won't work. Tells you everything you need to know about how her presidency would go if that's her first policy position and the Democrats themselves are rejecting it. Remember, it was only 6 months ago Democrats were telling Joe Biden he needed to drop Kamala Harris, and now she's the nominee. Good luck with that.